Miata fanboy lore clearly states that the best MX-5 is the one that you're driving. That's because if you're looking for this kind of car, it's almost impossible to go wrong unless you're tall. However, you can choose one that fits your lifestyle better than others. So after driving plenty of ND Miatas and buying one myself, it's time for me to make a complete buyer's guide. Briefly, if you enjoy fun, detailed car content, consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell. If we hit 100,000 subs before 2026, I'll make another special, financially questionable series of your choosing. Thank you. The first thing that you need to decide is whether or not you're going to buy a new or used one. I just took a deep dive into that question a couple of weeks ago, so I'll just boil things down here. There are some advantages to the new car, one of which is not the engine. It's the same 2-liter inline-4 here in the United States that makes 181 horsepower. You can rev it to 7,500 RPM. It's a blast. Even ND2s that are just a couple of years old with 5,000 miles or so can sometimes be $10,000 cheaper than the new equivalent. So for the person who's just going to modify this, take it to the track, or for the person who's just going to treat it as a weekend vehicle, that is a very hard car to pass up. But if this is going to be your fair weather daily or year-round daily like it is for me currently, you might want to go with the ND3 if you can afford it, for a few reasons. The most meaningful improvements with the new car come from the updated steering. You have more on and near center steering feedback, which makes the car feel a little bit more precise around gentle curves like this. You're also going to have an infotainment system that's going to age better. You're going to get a fresh warranty. You get a little bit more peace of mind that they've had more time to work out the transmission issues that some people have experienced. And you'll get my gold star of approval because you purchasing a new one tells Mazda to keep building a featherweight, simple roadster. It's awesome that we can still buy a car like this in the day of 5,000-pound sports sedans and family commuter SUVs that run 10-second quarter miles. The next big decision is which transmission to buy, and you're going to be given the option for a 6-speed manual or a 6-speed automatic. I'm not here to tell you that you should always buy a manual or that automatics are superior in 2025, but what I will say is that the MX-5 is all about making you feel connected to the car and your surroundings. The manual transmission is the best for that, and this one happens to be honestly my favorite in any new car. Shifter is light and beautifully mechanical, precise. I think the shift throws are the perfect length. They're short enough to make it easy to row gears quickly, but at the same time they're long enough to further add to the satisfaction. The clutch is also very short and easy to operate, while still giving you good feedback and a very predictable take. Plus, the gearing is short enough to make this engine that's down on torque feel peppy. At least until you get to the higher speeds. At that point, it definitely begins to run out of steam. If you've watched my videos, you've probably seen me do that exact thing, just revving this out countless times, but I'm always looking for an excuse to do that in this car. And you can do that without, I did like 50 miles per hour there. The speed limit here is 55. That is the joy of this car. And the manual transmission completes that experience. You can go with the 6-speed automatic. It's not geared poorly, but it is going to make it a little slower. It's only available in the Grand Touring trim, and you can't get it with the limited slip differential or sport suspension. For a lot of people, they physically can't drive a stick shift anymore, but they still want this very unique experience for the new car market. So for that buyer, it does make a lot of sense. Treat an automatic MX-5 like a nosebleed seat ticket to your favorite band's concert. You'll probably still have a good time if you buy one, but I wouldn't do that unless it's your only option. The next tricky decision you'll have to make is whether to go soft or hard. So this will actually be a pretty easy decision to make if you don't have essentially $40,000 to spend off of the showroom floor. As you can see there, it takes about 13 seconds to do its thing, and the maximum speed that it can operate at is 6 miles per hour, in case you were wondering. I think another important thing to point out for taller folk is that there is about an inch less of headroom, which makes a big difference in a car like this. At 6'3", I will bump my head into the ceiling. Whereas with the soft top, I have a little bit of breathing room. You can buy some seat lowering kits, something that I plan on doing and testing here very soon with my own car. So if you must have the RF, that might alleviate the issue. And I do understand the appeal here, especially with the look. I think this has such a beautiful silhouette. It works really well with the curves of the MX-5. However, it is important to note that only the roof comes off of the RF. You don't get the full open air experience. It's technically a Targa top in Porsche terms. When you're looking forward, it's visually the same experience, but there is going to be a little bit more wind noise with the top down than what you would get with the soft top. And there's also worse visibility when the top is down. So the nice thing with the soft top is that once that's removed, you can actually see over your shoulders very easily. This, it's not the case. And to my surprise, the RF is louder than my soft top Grand Touring on the highway by a slight but noticeable margin. That's because the GT gets a more well-insulated roof than the other soft top grades. At least the RF is quieter than if you're comparing it to, say, the Club soft top. And the last advantage with the RF is that it's generally going to be easier to work with. You don't have to do any special washing procedures. You can take it through automatic washes, something that you really shouldn't do with the soft top. And typically you're not going to have to worry about the top itself developing leaks after 10 or 15 years like you might with the soft top. That's really just going to depend on how you take care of it and where it's being stored. So far, the RF's mechanism appears to be dependable. So what are the advantages with the soft top outside of it being a true open experience? Well, one, it's cheaper. Two, you can get it in a wider variety of specs. If you care about weight savings, the rag top also shaves off an extra 100 pounds, something that Mazda has actually accounted for by retuning the damping here. I won't act like I can notice the weight around here, but maybe on a track you would. And the RF comes with those slight compromises in packaging, like reduced headroom, one less storage cubby, and a slightly smaller trunk opening with the RF. However, I found the cargo capacity to be the same no matter the top. We're talking 2 carry-on suitcases or a nice grocery trip, maybe more stuff than you would actually think, though it really does fall flat on its face if you have anything bulky, at least without some serious creativity. Now that we've made a few choices, the last thing that we need to decide on is which trim to buy. Let's start things off with the Sport. This is the spec that I would probably recommend to the least amount of people, but it does have a purpose. It's $3,500 cheaper than the Club, and it still gives you the goods to have a good time on a nice road, with largely the same tech, a few nice features here and there. However, I do believe it is missing some important details. There's no limited slip differential, there's no Sport Bilstein dampers, there's no oddly good Bose sound system. You don't get the cool color-keyed door card. You're gonna have 16-inch wheels, which might actually be better for some people depending on what roads they're usually driving on. But jumping up to just the Club trim is going to address all of those things. And it even gains a little extra ground effect. The Sport is for the person who wants a simple backroad companion, but they are firmly opposed to a new model, or this is for the person who is planning on slathering this with modifications for track use, so there's just no sense in spending the extra money. I'd say the Club is the sweet spot for a lot of the people who are looking for a fun weekend car. The Club with the BBS Recaro package is either a good value or a waste, depending on your needs. So if you were to go out and buy forged wheels, Recaro seats, Brembo front brakes, and the full sport appearance package, you'd be spending some serious money. So I think it was smart on Mazda to just offer that from the factory. I dig the aesthetic. I'm less enthusiastic about the heated Recaro seats. They hold you in place okay, but the seat bottoms are narrow and the bolstering is rigid, making them a pain for moderately meaty thighs. I do think I could spend $5,000 in a more strategic manner, but if you dig the style and you already have a track day planned, I think you'll probably love the Club BBS package. However, the spec that I think is the best is the Grand Touring. You can get the most color options, which are kind of slim with the MX-5. It's the only spec that you can get the tan interior in unless you picked up the 35th anniversary edition, which is basically a Grand Touring with a couple cosmetic enhancements. I also think that the GT is the best MX-5 for people who plan on racking up the miles. So you're gonna get all of the same performance enhancements of the Club trim, like the LSD, the more firm Bilstein sports suspension, which, to be fair, this is pretty soft when it comes to a sports car suspension. But if you go with this grade, it's going to be cheaper than that Club BBS package, so you have some money left over to improve the things that you think need to be improved, while also getting a nicer interior. We have chrome accenting for our automatic climate control. Yes, this is the only way that you can get that in an MX-5. You're also going to get leather, which doesn't feel half bad. I've driven this 10 hours in one day. These seats are supportive enough. I have just enough space for me at 6'3" to fit in this thing with reasonable comfort. Again, the GT soft top is the quietest Miata on the highway. You also get rain-sensing windshield wipers, adaptive headlights, and if you drive your MX-5 at night, you will really appreciate the Grand Touring's auto-dimming rear view and driver's side mirror. This is a low car. If you don't have those things, basically every new SUV is going to shine the light of God into your retinas. Okay, maybe I'm being a little bit dramatic, but it really does help reduce nighttime glare. I have absolutely zero regrets about going with this trim MX-5. Outside of the wheels, I don't hate them as much as I initially did, but I think I am going to upgrade them. I'd also like to add in the sport appearance package, but at over $1,500, that too is on the back burner. So long as you can afford one, you can fit in one, and you don't have a whole lot of practical demands, I don't see a way that you're going to be disappointed with a new MX-5 purchase. So when it comes down to choosing one, don't sweat too much. Just understand what things are most important to you and what things you could maybe live without. And if no MX-5 spec meets all of your criteria, there's a huge aftermarket to help fill in those gaps. And with that, I have nothing else to say other than enjoy your new Miata, and to the people who just watched this anyway, thank you. And thank you to my channel members for helping me improve my content. Consider joining for additional videos. I'll catch you in the next one.